I've been told my whole life that the whole reason that I'm not rich is because I don't work harder. And let me ask you, when was the last time that working hard worked out for you? Because I've seen people who work hard, I've seen people who barely show up with any ambition whatsoever getting paid the exact same amount of money in the workplace. So when you have people like me that are trying to wake the population up and realize that we're all in chains, they're going to attack people like me in any way that they can. I am a person that's disruptive. I'm a person that likes to fix things. I'm a person that looks at a corrupt system and thinks, you know what? This isn't working for any of us. The people that call us whiners because we don't have anything, because we're living in a system in which we are completely trapped, stuck in survival mode for the rest of our lives. If the system worked, would there be tens of millions of people right now, right at this very moment, that have no job benefits, that have no job security, and they're making minimum wage? Where does a system that can do that to tens of millions of people, how is that a logical system? But no, you're the whiner. You're the person that they look at needs to pull himself up by their bootstraps and a person that needs to do more. Remember, don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And if you replace those words, the word country, with corporation, it makes a lot more sense. What can you do for the corporation to ensure that it hits record profits? I would think that a couple of those things might be unpaid overtime, accepting low wages, accepting the fact that you will own nothing and be happy. So let's get into our monologue really quick. They love to call you a whiner the second you question why you're working harder than ever and still can't afford a decent life. But let's be real. Complaining is only a problem when we do it, meaning we poor people. The rich do it all the time, whether it's about taxes, regulations, or paying workers a fair wage. The truth is, they need you exhausted, overworked, and too ashamed to push back. The second you stop accepting their crumbs, the whole system starts to crack. So, if speaking up makes me a whiner, fine. I'd rather be loud and awake than silent and struggling to pay my bills. And that's something that I have felt my whole life. If you're not living the American dream, you should be ashamed of yourself. If you're living in this roach infested shack where I live right now, you should be ashamed of yourself. If you don't have a relationship, you should be ashamed of yourself. If you're not going on fabulous vacations, you should be ashamed of yourself. Have you guys noticed anything about what I just said? It's always your fault because you drive that car, because you live in that zip code, and because you're using that crappy Android phone that you got for practically free. It's always going to be the fault of the people who don't make it, the losers of our society, the 99%. It's always their fault that they don't have anything. They didn't go to the right school, they didn't meet the right connections, they're not part of the right networks, their parents aren't rich. That's another big one. You can tell a person who has grown up relatively poor their whole lives and watched their parents not know what to do like I did. My parents couldn't give me any sound financial advice. My parents didn't speak English. My parents didn't have an education. My parents had nothing to pass on to me other than their nasty habits and their failed relationships. When your mom is a Susie Rottencrotch like my mom was, you don't get anything from your childhood. And that's the biggest difference between us and them. They come from structure that's built on wealth and having sound financial knowledge. It doesn't hurt to have a few $1 million or $1 billion in your back pocket when it comes to building a life. But if you come from where I come from, the street, at 16 years old, your chances of breaking out of poverty are extremely low. But no one wants to believe that. Because again, no one wants to admit that things are bad out there. No one wants to admit that there are only garbage jobs in a society with very few opportunities for the good jobs. I have been searching for a good job, or at least a job that pays me as much as I make right now, for over 6 months. I've watched Gen Z be rejected from every single job application that he has submitted. Gone to interviews where they told him that he needed 3 to 5 years of experience to make $16 an hour. And I keep hearing in the comment section that even you guys are going into those jobs looking for a minimum wage job in retail and you're being told no. Why? Because this system only works as long as we obey. Keep your head down. Don't make any noise. Don't ask for a raise. Don't question the system. Just obey. Because if you can do that, then the system can continue. But the second you start waking up other people and telling them things like I do, like things can change. Things don't have to stay this way. We enable those corporations by supporting those corporations. I'm wearing Gap clothing right now. Why? Well, I don't know why. If you were to ask me that question 5 years ago, I probably would have said, "Oh, I like their style." But the reason is we have to buy from them. It's not like we can just make our own clothes or buy or grow our own food. It's not possible for poor people. It's the reason we're poor. It's the very reason why desperation work exists, because in order to have a desperation economy, most of your population has to be desperation workers. No desperation, no exploitation. That's the way you have to look at it. And every time I see an article where Gen Z is being blasted for not accepting the low wages, toxic workplaces, and the fact that they want to pay you less benefits and work you harder than ever before, Gen Z's right to look at a system that looks like that. They are absolutely right to look at a system that has entry level pay but ridiculous standards just to get that job. A job that you don't even want. That's the worst part, is most of us don't want the jobs that we have that are out there. So with that said, let me get into my 3 talking points very quickly, because this is supposed to be a morning 8 a.m. video that's supposed to be shorter. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon right before I leave for the gym, so I need to get to the gym, so let's make these talking points quick. The rich and powerful want to silence those who challenge the status quo. What does the status quo mean? It means you wake up every day, Monday through Friday, you go to a job you don't like, you do things you don't like, you come home to food you don't like, and if you're in a relationship, chances are you don't even like that relationship. For most of us, when it comes to relationships, they're a relationship out of necessity. You don't want to be with Susie Rottencrotch. And believe me, Susie Rottencrotch doesn't want to be with you. But at the same time, she does have all of those illegitimate children to feed, and you happen to be that sucker that decided not to see all the red flags associated with Susie Rottencrotch. But that's the status quo. We live in a world in which it is a two-income society, because one minimum wage paycheck isn't going to cut it. And in order to be able just to live here, you're going to be needing 2 incomes and at least 2 different side hustles for both of you. That's how ridiculous being alive has gotten. Talking point number 2. When workers speak up and demand change, it threatens the entire system of exploitation. This is the number one reason why jobs are created the way that they are. They don't want you getting comfortable there. They don't want anyone staying at Amazon and saying, you know what, we need better conditions, better pay, higher benefits. We need real jobs. for real people. We needed jobs for adults. Your MIC paychecks, your Happy Meal toys, and your corporate pizza parties aren't cutting it. The exploitation is disgusting. And unfortunately, they know how to manipulate people into doing what they want. It's not like we want to work there. It's not like we have any loyalty or like for the corporation. None of us like management. And believe me, management doesn't like you. And when you make noise, I make a lot of noise. When you make noise, management notices right away who the squeaky wheels are. And they're the first to get the axe. Because that's what you do with widgets that don't work correctly. Our final talking point. Dissent is a threat to those who profit from inequality. If you're listening to this video, you've already made the decision that you don't like this system. All I need from the rest of you is to accept that dissent is the only option. Because we don't live in a country famous for its revolution. We don't live in a country where liberals are winning elections. We live in a country where the corporation / America has told us how we're going to live, limited our resources and opportunities to the point where we look around to see how are we going to get out of this, and there are no real solutions. The profiting from inequality has gotten too much. They have gotten too greedy, in my opinion. How do you have record profits and record poverty in a society? How do you create a system that's so unjust that just by looking at it, you can tell that it smells bad and that it's not getting any better? People will always say that things are going to get better, just like people are always talking about Jesus coming back. As long as this corrupt system is allowed to exist, it will get greedier and greedier. Your run-ins with fleece at the office are going to become more frequent. And you're going to come home and you're going to be rubbing your little tushy wondering what happened. And then you're going to look in your wallet and it's going to say, it's going to have an IOU for the money that you need to pay your bills. And yet you're working harder and harder than ever without ever possibly getting ahead in a system that doesn't want you here.